I still remember the day everything fell apart, not because it was loud or violent, but because of how quietly it happened. One moment I was living in what I thought was love, and the next, it was gone, vanished like mist dissolving in sunlight. People talk about heartbreak as if it's one big explosion, but for me, it was the silence afterward that broke me. The quiet where trust used to live, the calm where laughter once belonged. That's what hurt the most. I used to wake up beside him and feel safe. I used to believe his smile meant something. We built a life together, plans, dreams, even the small routines that made us feel like a team. I made coffee while he checked emails. He'd steal a kiss before heading out the door, and I'd whisper, "See you tonight." I meant it every time. He didn't. I found out about the lies by accident. Isn't that always how it happens? You're not looking for the truth. You just stumble upon it like a shard of glass on the floor, something sharp, something that cuts deep before you even know you've been hurt. It started with a message I wasn't meant to see, a tone that didn't belong to friendship, a secret too heavy to ignore. My hands shook as I read the words, but my heart already knew. It's strange how your soul recognizes betrayal before your mind does. That night, I didn't confront him. I just watched how easily he lied, how naturally he played the role of the man I thought I knew. He smiled, asked about my day, held me like nothing was wrong. And in that moment, I realized something painful but powerful. The man I loved was only a version of himself he created for me. The real him was a stranger, and the stranger had been living in my home for years. For days, I said nothing. I moved through the motions: work, meals, conversations, each one heavier than the last. I'd catch my reflection and barely recognize the woman staring back. There were no tears left, only a hollow calm. That's when the idea of revenge first appeared, not loud or dramatic, but soft and tempting. It whispered, "Take your power back." It sounded like strength, but later, I'd learn it was just another kind of pain. I started observing him closely, noting every lie, every excuse, every inconsistency. I became quiet, watchful. He mistook my silence for forgiveness, but it was something else entirely. It was the stillness before a storm. Inside, I was gathering every broken piece of myself, every memory, every scar, and shaping them into something he couldn't control: truth. That was my weapon. Not anger, not chaos. Truth. The night I decided to act, the city was quiet. I remember sitting by the window, a cup of tea going cold in my hands, thinking about all the years I'd spent shrinking myself just to make him comfortable. I thought about how many times I'd apologized for things that weren't my fault, how many times I'd been made to feel small in the name of love. That's when I knew I couldn't live another day as a ghost in my own life. The plan wasn't complicated. It wasn't even cruel. It was simply revealing the truth, his truth. I gathered everything: messages, photos, timelines. I wrote down every lie he'd ever told me, not to destroy him, but to make sure I never forgot what I survived. When the time came, I didn't scream or cry. I just left the envelope on his desk with a single note: "You lied without remorse. Now the truth will speak for me." The next day, the fallout began. His colleagues found out. The perfect mask he'd worn cracked open for the world to see. He tried to reach me: calls, texts, desperate apologies, but I was gone by then, physically and emotionally. I left the apartment, the city, and the version of myself that once believed love meant losing yourself to someone else. For weeks after, I lived in silence. It was both punishment and peace. The first few mornings, I'd wake up and instinctively reach for him. Then I'd remember there was no us anymore, just me. And as strange as it felt, that realization didn't shatter me. It freed me. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. It just kept going. And I began to understand that maybe I could too. I moved into a small place by the sea, a quiet town where nobody knew my name or my story. The air was cleaner there, the nights softer. I'd wake early, open the window, and let the salt wind fill the room. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without guilt. Healing didn't happen overnight. It came in waves, some days calm, some days crashing hard. There were mornings I felt strong enough to smile, and nights when the loneliness felt endless. But every time I thought I was breaking, I realized I was just unfolding, becoming, remembering who I was before I was hurt. I started painting again. It had been years since I'd touched a brush, but art had always been the language my soul understood best. At first, the colors were dark blues, grays, shadows of memory. But slowly, Lighter shades began to appear: gold, cream, pale pinks like dawn breaking through clouds. I wasn't painting pain anymore. I was painting possibility. Sometimes people in town would ask why I moved there. I'd smile and say, for peace. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I came to find the version of myself that betrayal buried, the one who believed in softness, kindness, and new beginnings. One evening, as I walked along the beach, I saw a white orchid washed ashore. Fragile, beautiful, out of place. I picked it up, held it gently in my hand, and laughed quietly. The ocean has a funny way of returning what you think you've lost. I kept that flower in my sketchbook, pressed between pages. It reminded me that even the most delicate things can survive the roughest waves. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him, not at myself. Anger had burned itself out long ago, leaving only clarity. I didn't need him to suffer or to see my worth. I just needed to know that I had survived something that once felt impossible. And I had. It was during those quiet months by the sea that I learned the difference between revenge and healing. Revenge wants someone else to feel your pain. Healing allows you to let go of it altogether. One is loud, temporary. The other is quiet, eternal. And in that quiet, I finally found myself again. There's something strange about rebuilding your life after it's been shattered. You begin to see the beauty in things you once ignored. The sound of rain tapping on the window, the way sunlight filters through curtains, the small comfort of making breakfast for one. I used to think I needed someone else to make those moments feel complete. But now they were enough on their own. More than enough. Actually, they were real. Every morning, I'd walk down to the shore. The sand was always cool beneath my feet, and the ocean sang the same song, steady, eternal, forgiving. I started to listen, really listen, to the rhythm of the waves, to the whisper of wind through the palms, to my own breath. It was the first time in years I had heard silence that didn't hurt. Sometimes I would close my eyes and remember who I used to be before love turned into a battlefield. I remembered a younger version of myself, soft, creative, unguarded, the girl who believed in endless possibilities. Somewhere along the way, I had lost her, trying to become someone else's definition of enough. And now, step by step, I was finding her again. Not the same, but wiser, stronger in a quiet way. There were moments when the memories tried to return: his voice, his promises, his betrayal, but instead of running from them, I let them come. I let them sit beside me, breathe with me, and then fade like waves retreating from shore. That's what healing felt like. Not forgetting, but no longer bleeding from the remembering. Days turned into weeks, and I started volunteering at a small art center in town. They ran workshops for children, painting, crafts, colors everywhere. The first time I helped a little girl mix paint, she looked up at me with eyes so bright they seemed to hold sunlight inside them. I made a rainbow, she said, proudly showing her messy canvas. And I smiled because somewhere deep down, I realized I was making my own rainbow too. The more time I spent there, the lighter I became. The children laughed without hesitation, created without fear, loved without condition. They reminded me that joy didn't need to be earned. It just existed, waiting to be noticed. I started to smile more, to talk more, to breathe in the kind of peace that only comes from doing something that matters. And then one day, I met Daniel. He wasn't like the man I'd known before. He didn't arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. He appeared quietly, like a sunrise you almost miss until the world turns golden. He worked at the art center too, fixing broken frames, cleaning brushes, helping the kids build things from scraps. He was kind in the simplest ways. He listened. He noticed. He didn't try to fill my silence, he respected it. For the first time, someone looked at me and didn't see a woman broken by betrayal. He saw someone still standing, someone trying, someone worthy of softness again. But I was careful. I didn't let my heart run ahead of me this time. I took my time: long walks, long talks, slow trust. Some nights, I'd lie awake and wonder if I was ready to feel again. Other nights, I'd realize I already was, not because I needed love, but because I'd learned how to love myself enough to share it freely. One evening, we sat on the pier watching the sunset paint the sky with colors too beautiful to describe. Daniel turned to me and asked softly, "Do you ever regret it all, the past, I mean?" I looked at the horizon and smiled, not out of joy or sadness, but understanding. "No," I said, "because it broke me in ways that forced me to rebuild. And this version of me, she's finally real." He nodded quietly, and that was the moment I knew he understood. Not the details, not the pain, but the transformation. And maybe that's all we ever need, not someone to fix us, but someone to sit beside us while we grow. As the days passed, life began to bloom again. My paintings changed too. They weren't about loss anymore. They were about light. The colors had stories. Yellows for hope, blues for calm, greens for rebirth. Every brush stroke felt like breathing. Every finished canvas felt like closure. I started selling them in a small local gallery. People would stop, stare, and tell me they felt something: peace, warmth, nostalgia. They didn't know my story, but they could feel my healing in the art. That meant more to me than any apology ever could. One night, after an exhibition, I stood in front of my latest piece. A field of wildflowers under a stormy sky, sunlight breaking through the clouds. A woman nearby whispered, "It feels like the storm's ending." And I thought, yes, mine did. But healing isn't a straight line. Some nights, the old ghosts returned in dreams, in songs, in the quiet moments when the world felt too still. I'd catch myself wondering where he was, if he ever thought of me, if he ever felt the weight of what he'd done. But then I'd remind myself, his remorse isn't my responsibility, my peace is. So I'd make tea, sit by the window, and watch the stars. I'd whisper to myself, "You made it," because that was the truth I did. Through betrayal, through heartbreak, through the storm of losing everything, I found something far greater, myself. And perhaps that's the real story, not the betrayal, not the revenge, not even the love lost, but the quiet journey of coming back home to your own heart. The days turned softer after that. There was no sudden miracle, no grand moment of closure, just an everyday peace that began to take root inside me. I'd wake before sunrise, open the curtains, and watch the world come alive one shade at a time. The ocean still whispered outside my window, its rhythm steady, forgiving. I think that's what healing really sounds like: steady forgiveness. At the art center, life unfolded in small, quiet miracles. I watched the children grow braver with every painting, bolder with every color. They reminded me that creation is an act of courage, putting something on a blank canvas even when you don't know how it'll turn out. I realized that's what life was asking of me too, to create again, to love again, even after being broken. One morning, while cleaning brushes, I found an old photograph tucked between two sketchbooks. It was of me and him, my past. We were smiling, holding hands, looking like the kind of couple you see in greeting cards. For a second, my chest tightened. Not from love, but from the memory of who I used to be in that picture. I stared at it for a while, then smiled softly and placed it in the bin. Not out of hate, but acceptance. That chapter had ended. I no longer needed to carry its weight. Later that day, a young woman joined one of our workshops. Her name was Leela. She painted with a kind of sadness I recognized instantly, the kind that doesn't need words. After class, she stayed behind, pretending to clean her brushes just to avoid leaving. I asked gently, "Are you okay?" She hesitated, then whispered, "He left me, said I wasn't enough." I felt those words like an echo through time. I didn't tell her my story. I just said, "You are enough. You always were." She cried. I held her hand. That's when I realized maybe the reason I went through all that pain was so I could help someone else find their light again. From that day on, Leela became a regular at the center. We painted side by side, in silence and in color. She didn't need saving, none of us do, but she needed space to remember her worth, just like I once did. Watching her slowly bloom again reminded me of my own journey, how far I'd come from that trembling version of myself who once doubted she could survive. Healing isn't just about feeling better, it's about becoming someone who helps others believe they can too. Daniel noticed the change in me. He'd often watch from a distance as I worked, a quiet smile on his face. One evening, he handed me a small wooden box. Inside it was a smooth pebble with the word peace engraved on it. "For when the waves get rough again," he said. I held it in my palm, warm from his hand, and felt something shift inside me: trust. Not in him, but in life again. It took me a long time to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean saying, "What happened was okay." It means saying, "I'm okay despite what happened." It means choosing to stop carrying the story like an open wound. It means freeing yourself from the version of you that was built around pain. That night, I walked to the shore, the moon hanging low, waves lapping at my feet, and whispered, "I forgive you." But it wasn't for him. It was for me. There's something freeing about letting go, not dramatically, not with tears, but quietly. Like setting down a heavy suitcase you've been carrying too long. My heart felt lighter, my steps steadier. I realized I didn't need closure from him. because I'd already written my own ending. The ending where I survived. The ending where I found peace. Seasons changed. The town transformed with them, spring blossoms painting the streets, children running through puddles after summer rain, autumn leaves scattering like confetti. I found beauty in everything ordinary. I hosted my own art show that winter. The theme was becoming. Each painting told a part of the story: pain, loss, rediscovery, hope. People walked through the gallery in silence, eyes wide, hearts open. Some cried, some smiled, but everyone felt something. And that, to me, was enough. When the show ended, an elderly woman approached me. She touched one of the paintings and said softly, "This one, it feels like forgiveness." I smiled, tears forming in my eyes. "It is," I said. "It's mine." I never imagined that the same story that once broke me could become art that healed others. That's the quiet miracle of life. You never know how your scars might light the way for someone else. One evening, as I closed the art center, I looked around the empty room, the brushes drying, the canvases leaning against the wall, the soft hum of the sea outside. I felt a deep, unshakable gratitude, not for the pain, but for what it taught me, for how it led me here, to peace, to purpose, to myself. Daniel met me outside. We walked home in silence, our hands brushing lightly. No rush, no expectations, just presence. Sometimes love isn't a storm or a spark, it's a quiet evening walk with someone who makes the silence feel safe. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the word home. For years, I believed home was a person, a place, a promise. But I was wrong. Home isn't found, it's built within yourself, piece by piece, through every heartbreak and every healing. It's the moment you realize you're not searching anymore, you've arrived. I had arrived, at peace, at wholeness, at me. And so I closed my eyes, breathing softly, whispering a prayer of thanks, not for what I lost, but for what I found in the ruins of it. Because the truth is, some endings are just beginnings in disguise. You just have to live long enough to see them bloom. Sometimes I walk back to that old version of my life, not physically, but in memory. It's strange how time softens even the sharpest edges. There was a time when I couldn't even hear his name without feeling my heart twist. Now, when I think of him, there's no bitterness, no sting, just distance, like looking at an old photograph of someone you used to know, someone who taught you something painful but necessary. I remember the apartment where it all fell apart, the faint smell of his cologne, the half-drunk cups of coffee, the way the curtains never quite closed properly. For a while, those memories haunted me. Now, they feel like echoes of a story that happened to someone else. A woman who looked like me, but wasn't me anymore. I don't hate her. I thank her, because she endured what I didn't think I could survive. She walked through fire and came out whole, scarred, yes, but glowing in her own way. Life has a quiet sense of irony. Months after my art show, I received a letter, his handwriting unmistakable. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside was a simple apology. No excuses, no begging, just a few lines admitting that he'd hurt me, that he'd lost something real, and that he hoped I'd found peace. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just sat there feeling calm, because I realized something powerful. I didn't need the apology anymore. I'd already moved on. Forgiveness had found me long before he did. I placed the letter in a box with old photographs, mementos of a life I once had, and tucked it away, not out of anger, but closure. The kind that comes quietly, not through confrontation, but through understanding. That's the thing about healing, it rarely announces itself. It just arrives one day, and you realize the weight you carried so long is gone. One evening, I stood by the sea again, the wind brushing through my hair, the sky painted with soft gold and fading violet. I thought about how strange it is that the same ocean that once mirrored my sadness now reflected my peace. The waves hadn't changed, I had. I smiled, letting the sound of the tide blend with my heartbeat. I used to stand here waiting for something, a sign, a person, a reason. Now, I stood simply to be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel joined me. He slipped his hand into mine, warm, steady, unspoken understanding. We didn't need words. Some connections are built in silence. I leaned into him, my head resting on his shoulder, and whispered, "I never thought peace could be this quiet." He smiled, his voice soft. "Maybe peace isn't the absence of noise. Maybe it's the sound that doesn't hurt anymore." I thought about that for a long time. Because he was right. Peace isn't a perfect life. It's the gentle rhythm of ordinary days. It's laughter returning slowly. It's waking up without dread. It's being proud of the person you became after everything tried to break you. As the seasons changed again, I started writing small reflections, journal entries, little lessons I'd learned from the storms I'd survived. At first, it was just for me, but soon, others began to read them. Messages came from strangers, women, men, people from everywhere saying my words helped them heal too. It was humbling, realizing that my pain had a purpose after all. Maybe the scars we carry aren't meant to be hidden. Maybe they're meant to shine, so others can find their way in the dark. I began hosting art and writing workshops for those trying to heal. Every session was a mix of tears and laughter, of silence and breakthroughs. Sometimes we didn't talk about the pain directly. We just created. We painted our grief, our hope, our forgiveness. I told them, you don't need to erase your past. You just need to paint over it until it becomes part of the story. And slowly, I watched them transform the same way I once did. On the anniversary of the day everything ended, I went back to that first beach walk where I'd found the white orchid. I brought a new flower this time, a small sunflower, bright and warm. I placed it gently on the water and watched as the tide carried it away. Thank you, I whispered, not to him, but to life, to the journey, to every version of myself that got me here. Because now I understood revenge might give you a moment of satisfaction, but healing gives you a lifetime of peace. One fades, the other stays, and I chose peace. Every day, in every breath, in every sunrise that I no longer fear to face. As I walked back up the shore, I felt the wind behind me, not pushing, not pulling, just walking with me. For the first time, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt alive, whole, ready. And that's when I realized I wasn't living in the shadow of betrayal anymore. I was living in the light of everything it taught me. Sometimes the universe breaks you not to destroy you, but to remove what was never meant for you so that you can rebuild with what truly belongs. And maybe that's the quiet truth I needed all along. That pain isn't the end of the story. It's just the page before the chapter where you finally come home to yourself. As the sky turned indigo and the first stars began to appear, I whispered softly to the night, I forgive, I release, I begin again. The words felt lighter this time, not like a confession, but like a song, a promise to myself. And as the sea shimmered under the moonlight, I smiled, finally understanding what love truly means. Not the kind that blinds you or breaks you, but the kind that begins and ends within you. Peaceful, quiet, eternal.